Have you ever imagined being invited to an event where, deep down, you know the intention isn't to honor you but to humiliate you? That's exactly what happened to Clara, a young woman who carried the scars of a difficult relationship in her heart. Invited by her ex-boyfriend to a wedding that felt more like an emotional trap, she had no idea that destiny was about to flip the script in the most surprising way. The most emotional stories often begin in moments like this, where we're challenged to show our true strength. But what happened at this wedding went beyond any expectation. What started as an attempt to humiliate turned into one of the most moving stories you'll hear today, a tale of resilience, courage, and twists worthy of a movie script. And here's the curious part. Sometimes those who try to bring us down end up pushing us to rise even higher. Clara proved that self-love and determination can transform even the most difficult situations. What did she do to turn the tables? And how can a delicate moment carry such a powerful lesson? Get ready to dive into a real story that will stir your emotions and make you reflect on how life surprises us in the most unexpected moments. After all, what seemed like a humiliating ending turned into the beginning of an extraordinary chapter. Clara was the kind of person who carried a spark in her eyes, one that revealed the strength of someone with a dream bigger than the world. Balancing 2 jobs and intense studies, she nurtured a clear goal: becoming a doctor. For Clara, every effort was like a brick building the path to the future she so desired. Can you imagine living such a real story, full of challenges and hopes? Despite the hardships, she always found reasons to keep going: her family, her passion for medicine, and the desire to change lives. Have you ever felt that kind of energy that pushes you forward even on the hardest days? One evening, while reviewing her physiology notes, her phone buzzed with an unexpected message. It was from Lucas, her boyfriend. "We need to talk," the message read. Those 3 words alone were enough to unsettle Clara. Something about Lucas's direct tone made her feel that this wouldn't be an ordinary conversation. Isn't it curious how we can often sense that something is about to change? Clara knew she had to prepare for the unexpected, even without knowing what was to come. On her way to meet Lucas at a nearby cafe, her mind was replaying moments they had shared. It felt like watching a love story with twists you didn't see coming. Every smile, every promise made, seemed like a tiny light amidst the uncertainty. Could something have gone wrong? She wondered, nervously clasping her hands. It's easy to let fear take over in such situations, but she took a deep breath and decided to face whatever was coming. Life, after all, is built on these courageous choices. When she entered the cafe, she spotted Lucas sitting in a corner. He looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with his bag strap as if trying to buy time. Clara felt a chill in her stomach. Seeing someone who had always been her safe haven now so distant felt surreal, like their story was about to take an unexpected turn. In that moment, Clara had no idea that her life was transforming into one of the most moving stories she would ever live. But fate had already taken the first step. Lucas seemed to struggle with his words as he looked at Clara. "This isn't easy for me," he began, but it was clear that the weight of that conversation would fall heavier on her. He explained that despite loving her, his family had never accepted Clara's humble background. In their eyes, Lucas was supposed to prioritize appropriate standards. Have you ever seen something like this? A true story where love, no matter how genuine, gets lost in the midst of external expectations and judgment? Clara felt as if the ground had vanished beneath her feet. She listened in silence while he justified his decision, but inside she was a whirlwind of emotions. How could something so beautiful be undone by something so superficial? This wasn't just a love story. It was also a bitter lesson about how some people allow others to dictate the course of their lives. Lucas insisted that it was best for both of them, but Clara knew it wasn't about them. It was about him lacking the courage to face others' impositions. After the conversation, Clara wandered the streets aimlessly, lost in thought. How could she move forward after such an unexpected breakup? Yet, even amidst the pain, something inside her began to stir. It's curious how the human heart works. She realized that although she was hurt, this could be an opportunity to transform her life. Many moving stories are born in moments like this, when pain becomes the fuel for change. That night, Clara made a promise to herself. Her background wouldn't define what she deserved or what she could achieve. And here's a lesson for you. When someone or something tries to make you believe you're not enough, remember that these limitations only have the power you give them. As difficult as it may seem, ask yourself, how can I use this experience to grow? Clara didn't know exactly how, but she felt that this breakup would be the start of an extraordinary journey. Clara spent weeks processing the breakup. Each tear shed was accompanied by a deeper reflection. She knew she couldn't let that moment define her future. That's when she decided to turn her pain into strength. Sometimes the most inspiring stories are born this way, when a broken heart becomes the fuel for real change. Clara began to see the breakup not as the end of a love story, but as the starting point of a new journey. Have you ever experienced something similar, where adversity didn't break you but made you grow? For Clara, this meant dedicating herself like never before. She created a routine that reflected her determination. In the morning, she worked as an assistant at a local store. In the afternoon, she reviewed tough subjects like biochemistry, while waiting for customers at the small cafe where she worked evenings. It was an exhausting pace, but Clara knew that each effort brought her closer to achieving her dream. If you've ever thought about turning pain into purpose, start with small steps. Set daily goals, take free online courses, or read books that inspire you. At the same time, she began to redefine how she viewed the breakup. Clara wasn't just striving to prove her worth to others, but also to herself. She realized that true victory wasn't about showing her value to those who underestimated her. It was about discovering her own potential. Isn't it amazing how a moving story can change the way we look at life? That's the power of transformation, finding meaning even in what seemed like a loss. Still, Clara knew the road would be long. There were nights when the loneliness felt unbearable, and days when exhaustion almost made her quit. But in those moments, she reminded herself why she had started. Like in a motivational story, she used her small achievements as encouragement. Passing a difficult test or hearing a customer's compliment were reminders that her effort was worth it. Little did she know this effort would lead to unexpected encounters and emotional new chapters. One day, while Clara was organizing the few pieces of furniture in her small apartment, one of the cabinets broke, scattering papers and books everywhere. It was the last thing she needed. Amid the chaos, she heard a knock on the door. It was Gabriel, her neighbor, who, upon seeing the situation, offered to help. He was a carpenter, always with tools at hand, and seemed to have a special talent for fixing what was broken, both furniture and hearts. Have you ever noticed how life sometimes places the right people in your path at the exact moment you need them? While Gabriel worked on the cabinet, Clara was surprised by the ease of their conversation. He asked genuine questions, wanting to understand her routine and struggles, and spoke in a way that brought smiles even in tense moments. It was as though he understood that Clara didn't need judgments or magic solutions, but someone to listen. In real stories like this one, these small connections often mark the beginning of great transformations. Gabriel shared parts of his own story, explaining how he learned carpentry from his grandfather. He didn't see his work as insignificant, but as a way to leave something meaningful in the world. "Every piece I repair is like giving a second chance to something discarded," he said. Clara found that perspective fascinating and deeply human. After all, isn't that what many of us seek? Second chances to start over? Gabriel was a living example of how small actions can inspire significant changes. When he finished fixing the cabinet, Gabriel left with a smile and a simple parting remark. "If you need anything, just knock on the door next to yours." It was a small gesture, but it carried great meaning. There, in her little apartment, Clara felt that she wasn't alone on this journey. It was as if that interaction marked the beginning of a new inspiring story. And though Clara didn't yet realize it, Gabriel would stand by her side in moments that would shape the next chapters of her life. Over time, Clara and Gabriel began to see each other more often. He would stop by with simple excuses, returning a borrowed tool or offering help with something in her apartment, but it was clear that Gabriel genuinely cared for Clara. He could see beyond her tired appearance and challenging days, recognizing a strength she might not even know she possessed. Have you ever lived a moving story like this, where someone's presence transforms not only moments but entire perspectives? One day, while Clara was preparing for an important exam, Gabriel showed up with a surprise, a small folding table he had built himself. "I thought it might help with your studies," he said with a shy smile. For Clara, that gesture was more than just a gift. It was a reminder that even in the toughest times, there are people willing to lend a hand. Sometimes the most meaningful support doesn't come from grand gestures, but from small acts that remind us we're not alone. With Gabriel by her side, Clara began to find balance in her routine. He encouraged her to accept help, something she had always resisted for fear of appearing weak. "Accepting support isn't weakness, it's wisdom," he would say playfully. Gabriel became an emotional anchor for Clara, helping her see that sharing her struggles wasn't a sign of defeat, but of courage. Perhaps you know someone like this, who reminds you that it's possible to share life's burdens without losing your essence. Through conversations about dreams and challenges, their friendship grew stronger. It wasn't just a family story or a life story, but something evolving into a unique bond. Clara felt for the first time in a long while that she could fully trust someone. Little did she know that this connection would be essential for facing the next stages of her journey. After all, the most touching stories often start this way, with ordinary people coming together to create something extraordinary. Clara always had a spark in her eyes when it came to her studies, but now there was something more. With Gabriel's constant support, she felt she was finally reaching her full potential. Between work and long nights of studying, Clara began to excel in her classes, achieving impressive grades in subjects that once seemed impossible. You know those motivational stories that prove hard work pays off? Clara was living her own, with every little victory reinforcing that she was capable. One morning, she received an email that changed everything: her acceptance into medical school. Clara could barely hold back tears as she read and reread the message, as if she needed to convince herself it was real. Gabriel, upon hearing the news, prepared a simple but meaningful surprise: a small celebration in his apartment with a homemade cake and a note that read, "This is just the beginning." It was a moment Clara would never forget, a milestone in a life story that showed how today's efforts shape tomorrow's triumphs. At college, Clara faced new challenges, particularly prejudice from some classmates who judged her humble background. But instead of letting it bring her down, she used it as motivation. "If they underestimate you, show them who you really are with results," she told herself. This mindset earned Clara the respect of even the most skeptical, proving that a person's true value lies not in their origins, but in what they are capable of building. This is a lesson anyone can apply. Others' judgment doesn't define your destiny. Your actions do. As semesters passed, Clara realized that every sacrifice had been worth it. She began to see that her story wasn't just about achieving her own dreams, but about inspiring others to believe in the power of their narratives. Gabriel continued to stand by her, supporting her in every possible way, making each of Clara's accomplishments also a victory for him. It was a moving story in the making, filled with lessons about resilience, partnership, and how determination can transform anyone's life. Despite all the support Gabriel and Clara gave each other, not everything was perfect. True relationships, like the most authentic, real stories, aren't built solely on easy moments. Over time, doubts and insecurities began to surface. Gabriel, at times, felt he wasn't good enough for Clara's achievements. Meanwhile, Clara questioned whether she was demanding too much from him, while dedicating herself so intensely to medical school. Have you ever noticed how even the strongest bonds require effort and nurturing? The differences between them, which seemed insignificant at first, began to stand out. Gabriel had a practical view of life, while Clara was driven by big dreams. One evening during a conversation about the future, Gabriel confessed, "Sometimes I wonder if you'll eventually realize you deserve someone better." Surprised, Clara realized he was battling his own internal struggles. That moment showed that even in love stories, there's room for vulnerability, and it takes courage to face those feelings together. Instead of letting doubts grow, Clara and Gabriel decided to talk openly. They learned to listen to each other without interruptions or judgment. This effort not only strengthened their relationship, but also revealed how committed they were to the journey they were building. If you're going through something similar, a practical tip is to set aside time for honest conversations, where both can share fears and expectations. Sometimes a sincere dialogue is worth more than any other attempt to resolve conflicts. Over time, their challenges transformed into opportunities for growth. Clara grew to appreciate Gabriel's patience and support even more, while Gabriel learned to see her accomplishments as part of the dream they were building together. It was a motivational story about how relationships can evolve when there's dedication and mutual respect. They still had much to face, but they knew each challenge was making them stronger. Life was setting the stage for new chapters, full of surprises and achievements. The day of the wedding arrived, and Clara was excited to celebrate the union of two close friends. What she didn't expect was to cross paths with someone from her past. Daniel, her ex-boyfriend, was there. But what happened next was even more surprising. During the ceremony, Daniel's father suddenly collapsed. The tension in the room was palpable, but Clara, without hesitation, ran to his aid. It was as if her entire journey had prepared her for that moment. Have you ever heard a moving story that blends reunions, triumph, and purpose? This was one of those. With her medical knowledge and impressive calm, Clara managed to stabilize the man until the ambulance arrived. Her actions didn't go unnoticed. Daniel, visibly moved, thanked her with tears in his eyes. It was as if that moment had lifted the weight of the past. Clara, however, wasn't looking for recognition. She knew that helping others was at the core of who she was and who she had always aspired to be. Sometimes the greatest achievements in life come from decisions made with the heart rather than the mind. Later, during the reception, Daniel approached Clara to apologize for how he had treated her years ago. He admitted his mistake in letting societal expectations dictate his decisions. But Clara, with a serene smile, replied, "I've already forgiven you. Everything that happened made me who I am today." It wasn't just a moment of closure. It was an example of how the most emotional, moving stories often lead us to places we never imagined. From afar, Gabriel watched everything unfold with immense pride. He realized that Clara hadn't just saved a life that day, she had also shown the power of forgiveness and resilience. At the end of the night, as they walked home together, Clara turned to Gabriel and said, "Today proved that we are exactly where we're meant to be." It was a new beginning, not just for Clara, but also for the bond she and Gabriel were building. And though the past was now behind them, the future held even more challenges and opportunities. Clara and Gabriel realized that their journeys wouldn't be complete without giving back to the community around them. That's when they started dedicating their time and energy to making a difference in other people's lives. Clara, now a respected doctor, organized community health projects, bringing basic care to underserved families. It was like living a moving story every day, where each consultation wasn't just a diagnosis, but an opportunity to transform lives. Have you ever thought about the impact small actions can have on so many people? While Clara worked in healthcare, Gabriel found his own purpose. He began teaching carpentry to young people in the community, showing them that simple skills could open doors to new opportunities. His students, many of whom had little hope for the future, saw Gabriel as more than a teacher. He was an inspiration. "Every piece you create is a story of overcoming challenges," he would say. "Isn't it incredible how what seems like a small talent can become a tool to change lives?" Together, Clara and Gabriel were an unstoppable duo. They didn't just support each other, but also inspired those around them to believe in the power of collaboration and resilience. Every completed project, whether a consultation by Clara or a piece of furniture built by Gabriel, became a new moving story to be told. And the most beautiful part? They never forgot where they came from, using their experiences to connect with those who needed it most. Their impact on the community began to grow exponentially. Clara dreamed of expanding the health projects, while Gabriel planned to open a larger workshop to reach more young people. They knew the journey was just beginning and that the future held even greater challenges and victories, because ultimately, the most inspiring stories are the ones that never stop unfolding. Time passed, and Clara and Gabriel reached a new milestone in their lives, the birth of their daughter, Alice. From the moment they held her for the first time, they felt she was the symbol of everything they had overcome together. Alice was more than just a baby. She was the beginning of a new family story, filled with hope, love, and gratitude. Isn't it amazing how the arrival of a new life can transform not only routines, but also how we see the world? Clara, with her resilient spirit, saw in Alice the chance to pass on everything she had learned during her journey. Between Alice's naps and sweet smiles, Clara began writing letters, leaving advice her daughter could read in the future. "Never let circumstances define who you are," one letter read. This practice of writing, so simple, is something anyone can adopt to create a legacy for their children. After all, it's not material possessions that leave the deepest mark, but the stories and lessons we share. Gabriel, on the other hand, found joy in the little moments of daily life. He made sure to show Alice the sound of wood being cut, the smells of the workshop, and even the rough feel of his calloused hands. "I want her to grow up knowing that work, when done with love, is a way to build real stories," he said proudly. Have you ever thought about how the simplest gestures can carry the most profound messages? Gabriel was a master at turning the ordinary into life lessons. Alice's arrival not only brought joy, but also strengthened the bond between Clara and Gabriel. Every laugh, every late-night cry was a reminder that they were in this new phase together. And the most beautiful part, they became an inspiration to those around them. Friends and neighbors saw in their story a true moving story of love, resilience, and unity. Alice was the reflection of all of that, a reminder that the happiest chapters of our lives are written when we face challenges with courage and love. Now that you've heard this story full of resilience, courage, and unexpected twists, the question is, what will you do with the lessons it brought? We all have moments when we feel challenged, perhaps even underestimated. But the key isn't what happens to you, it's how you respond to it. Clara showed us that pain can be transformed into strength, and even the toughest situations hold the potential for change that depends solely on our attitude. So, what's your response to life's challenges? Are you ready to turn moments of difficulty into the foundation of a story that inspires others? Sometimes all it takes is one courageous step to completely change the course of your journey. Think about it. What can you do today, no matter how small, to start writing a moving story that makes you proud in the future? Now, I want to hear from you. What impacted you the most in this story? Leave your comment, share your perspective, and take the opportunity to connect with others who also seek inspiration. And, of course, if you enjoyed this content and want to continue learning from emotional stories like this one, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. That way you won't miss any of the upcoming chapters, because in the end, the most incredible stories are the ones we share together.